Welcome back to Steve's Project Car Garage. My name is Steve. Today we're going to start the assembly of the lower half of the engine. I got Chris over. We're going to go ahead and just get the block put together with the crank and pistons, get that all done, and then that way we have a good start for the actual engine itself. So make sure you grab yourself a cup of jitter juice and hang out. Cool. All right, so we're gonna get started here by getting the freeze plugs put in. I got the ones obviously in the head, and you saw in the last video, but we haven't done anything on here yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and get those popped on in. If you follow me on Instagram, you saw that I'd already gone through and cleared out all of the threads with the tap and die and just chased them all and got them all nice and pretty. So we got that done. But yeah, that's the first start, and we're gonna get that done, and then we're gonna go ahead and flip it over and start looking at assembling things. So let me get you all set up and let's get this guy rolling. All right, so as you saw in the head assembly video, we're gonna go ahead and just use a little bit of the Permatech Super 300 to go ahead and put a little coating of some gasket cinch in there before we go ahead and tap the plugs in.
I'll give it a little more. It's really hard to see on that black paint.
Yeah, it is. I got a nice size socket that just kind of fits nicely inside of there, so that way we're doing pressure from the outside as opposed to from the inside. We're just gonna lightly tap these guys in.
Yeah, give it an angle.
Two very boring minutes later.
All right, one down and however many to go. All right, here we go. We got all the freeze plugs in. They're all looking mighty fine. Pretty happy with it. Chris has not had to do freeze plugs much in the past, being that he comes from the air-cooled world. So this was a little bit different for him, but looked pretty good. What are your thoughts on doing freeze plugs?
Yeah, just don't overdrive them. Those ones on the end were scary.
Yeah, they were. yeah. But essentially we used a large socket and then just placed the socket over it, so that way we knew we couldn't drive them past the edge. With these, if you go in too far, they're in. Then you could drop them on in and have a real problem. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and get the block flipped over, and then we're going to start playing with the crank and seeing how that goes. All right, so Chris, what are we doing?
Cleaning, like everything in a car repair and restoration, this always comes down to cleaning. So under the bearings, on the bearing lands here, we just want this thing to be atomically clean, so there's no bit of dust or grinding, grit or anything that'll get between the face and the bearing shell itself. So I'm just cleaning any bits that have gone in there, a little denatured alcohol to pick up the dirt.
Perfect, and we're also doing the bearing caps, obviously.
Yep.
We have new main bearing cap bolts that we've already run in and out, just to make sure that those are good. And we're keeping the washers on there from before, but we decided to go with some new bolts. So that's what we're working on currently. Once we have that done, we're then going to go ahead and use some plastic gauge. We're going to seat the new bearings in, use plastic gauge to measure the clearances. I couldn't find a spec in the book anywhere, but based upon the size of the journal for the crank and then also the bearings, we're able to decipher that it's supposed to be about a clearance of about, what, 2 thou is what we were...
2,500, I think, is what it said, from 2.0 even on the crank to 2.25 in the inner bearing size. So yours will actually be probably different, and you say you're going oversized on that?
No, that's a stock
bearing, so that's what we're aiming for.
Yep.
You'll get an idea of how much we get back from the wear on this.
Perfect. So let's just keep cleaning, and we will pick back up with some measuring. Cool. So this is what we have here for our bearings. We got these bearings from, I want to say they got these from Spitfire a while ago. And some nice brand new bearings. These are stock size bearings. When I measured the crank itself, everything was really good for to be within stock spec, and the machine shop confirmed that, so we should be okay. But we're going to go ahead and get these guys fit. We're going to choose the right bearings, get them placed on in there, and then we're going to get some plastic gauge on them. Time out. So, what you're about ready to watch is going to be an abysmal display of mechanic skill. Or lack thereof for that matter, at least according to this guy. But, what I wanted to go ahead and talk about real quick is that as we go ahead and use the plastic gauge to check the bearings and to make sure that everything has proper clearances, which it did, we made a mistake. When I received the block back from the machine shop, they had mixed up the bearing caps, and I did not pay attention to that. They actually took the rear bearing cap and put it in the center, and the center into the rear. And we struggled with this for quite a while. We couldn't get that rear bearing cap in. It just was not working well with me. If I rocked it in, I could get it in, but once we had a bearing in it, it just didn't want to go. So what we ended up trying to do is putting it together, measured it with the plastic gauge, which you're going to see here in just a second, and all the clearances were good, but when it came time to assemble, we realized that when we put the crank together and the bearing caps on, that the rear thrust bearings, or the thrust washers rather, were spinning because there was nothing holding them in place. That's when it occurred to us that we had the wrong bearing caps on. So go ahead and roast me in the comments all you want. Tell me that my mechanical skills are abysmal. I get it. I'm new. I've never done this before. But full disclosure, that's what happened. So we do find the issue and correct it later on, but I'm going to save you a lot of time of watching me struggle with this, and we're just going to get to the good part. So let's go. All right, so what we're doing here is just putting on plenty of this assembly lube onto the new bearings, both on the bearing itself and then on the bearing cap bearings, both sides, just that way it's ready to receive the crank, so that way we don't score the bearings or anything like that as we go ahead and try to get this measured with some plastic gauge. All right, here we go. We're going to go ahead and lay the crank on in there. And then you'll see we're going to dab a little bit of grease on the actual crank itself there. And that's just really to help hold the plastic gauge in place. And so I'm going to cut a couple of pieces of the plastic gauge, and we're just going to go ahead and lay them on there using that grease to just kind of keep them in position. Neat little trick that Chris showed me. And so here we go. We're going to go ahead and get the bearing caps put on. And, well, we'll fast forward through this, but we struggled quite a bit, and my son made a cameo appearance. So anyways, let me go ahead and push past this, and we'll show you the measurement results. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and get these guys torqued on down. We first went to 30 pounds, and then we did 40 pounds, and then we ended up going for 60 pounds. So we got the bearing caps all torqued down, and yes, they're still in the wrong position, and I realize that. But, yep, got them all torqued down, so you know what that looks like. We'll go ahead and skip past the rest of this and show you when we get the bearing caps removed and see what the results are. Alright, I'm realizing that I didn't really do a good job of, narrating or voicing over or anything here that as far as the measurement is concerned, but everything measured out really, really well. We were using the 0 to 3 thou plastic gauge, and everything here was measuring out at approximately 2 thou clearance, which is exactly what we really were shooting for anyways. So just as a reminder, these are with stock bearings. We didn't have the crank ground or anything like that, just a polish that I did in a previous video. But it all came out really well, so we were super happy with the results. Even though we had the mixed up bearing caps, it didn't make a difference. Everything was spot on. So we're going to go ahead and just continue on with the build because everything was great. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and use plastic gauge, and we're going to do the crank with the connecting rods just to make sure that those are all clearanced correctly and well. I'm going to do it while it's outside. I'm going to do it on the actual table itself. It might be a little bit harder, but it's also a few less steps that we have to worry about. So we're going to do that. You saw the process on the crank. We're going to go ahead and now knock this out here with the connecting rods, and we'll come back to you with some results. Or not. Man, this video is a mess. I totally forgot to go ahead and film the results, but all the clearances were great. So let's carry on. Alright, so we got Chris actually working on putting on assembly lube on the bearings, but I'm going to talk about these real quick. So these are custom thrust washers from Scott Helms, customthrustwasher.com. And what he had me do is send him measurements of the end float of the crank before we disassembled it, and then measure the actual thrust washers after they came out, and he came up with these as sizes. So we got the 0.92 or 0.092 for the front, and then we got the 0.093 for the back of it. So essentially you have the thicker one towards the back, which is going to go right in here, and then the standard size, which is the 0.092, which goes in the front. And then this should give us that end float that we're looking for, which should be right about, what was it, 10 thou, right?
6 to 14, I think.
Oh, okay, 6 to 14. Cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and get this started. All right, so we went ahead and put the crankshaft in. I didn't film it, but we measured the end float on the crank, and we were at like 5 or 6 thou. It was super, super nice. So right where we want to be. Very happy with these. So we went ahead and provided a generous amount of assembly lube on both sides of the thrust washers per the instructions from Scott. And we are at a point now where we're pretty much ready to lower this crank in. What do you say?
Let's do it. Last time.
All right, let me go get the mounter up on the tripod and let's get it done. All right.
Eyeball this. Thrust washers in place.
Thrust washers are good.
Good.
Okay, fantastic. So that's in. So now it's all a matter of getting the bearing caps in.
346 minutes later.
All right, so I'm sure there were probably a bunch of you yelling at the screen saying, "You're doing it wrong!" And if you were, you were right. So when I brought this to the machine shop, I had all the bearing caps in the right place, and I'm guessing that they probably mixed some up. So this bearing cap goes into the back, and then this bearing cap is going to go in the middle, and then we have the front bearing cap. So essentially we had these guys mixed up, which probably explains why we were having so many issues with trying to go ahead and get this to go together. I went ahead and actually we referenced some of my old video from when we disassembled this thing, and that's how we were able to determine that that was indeed the case, because none of the part guides that I have, oh yeah, see that just dropped right in, actually showed us that which cap was different. So this should actually yeah, that's it, dropped right in. Well, I'll be darned. So there it is. Well, now that we have that solved, and that took us an hour, let's go ahead and continue with trying to put this guy together. Alright, so we got the bearing caps on there. We got them just kind of bump tighten, and now what we're going to do is we're just going to bring them on up to 20 foot-pounds, and then
30.
Then 30, and then we're going to keep working our way up until 60. Is that
60.
correct?
Well, we'll start at 30, I think.
Okay.
Just to make them all square.
Perfect. Well, that looks good. I mean, I think that we did a good job of getting the lower portion of the block done. I was hoping to get the pistons in, but I think that time-wise, we're probably at a pretty good stopping point.
It's a good place to, unless you wanted to mount like the pickup on the bottom or anything like that.
Nope, because I still have to go ahead and shave that. And
Yeah.
so, cool. Well, let's wrap up the video real quick.
Oh, yeah.
And then we'll roll this into my office, and it can stay there for a week. All right, that's going to do it. Thank you so much, Chris, for swinging by and helping me out. I'm happy with the progress that we got on this. We got the crank in. It's got some beautiful, nice play. It doesn't bind or anything. It's nice and smooth. So the next step is to go ahead and get the oil pump mounted and also start working on getting those pistons put in. So if you haven't done so already, please make sure you go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Click the bell to get those post notifications. And by the way, if you like this hat here, go ahead and check the link in the description below. Pick yourself one up. These are 25 bucks. And every little bit of profit that comes from those helps go towards buying bearings and parts and things of that nature for this car. So thanks again. And remember, when working on project cars like this, don't mix up your bearing caps. And most importantly, don't be that dreaded previous owner. Cheers.